morning. We're going to get started in just a moment, letting folks join. We can get started. I'm sure folks are joining in, and we are being recorded today. My name is Ted Wells, and thank you all for joining us. And I am outside at the Qualcomm headquarters in San Diego, where I am for a conference. And just thought this was kind of a cool site right behind me. They've got their flag up. A reminder of the different world that we are in, but also today we're going to talk about some of the opportunities and challenges confronting the LGBTQ plus population, as well as those who are seeking to be allies with members of those groups. So I am Ted Wells, and president and co-founder of STEMconnector. Our organization aims to engage industry in supporting STEM education and workforce with a focus on broadening participation among historically underrepresented populations. Our members include leading employers, many of whom are joining us today, as well as post-secondary institutions, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations focused on advancing STEM outcomes. We do this by convening people to explore issues of shared concern, like today, as well as in interactive in-person events. We develop insights to help stakeholders understand complex issues, and we increase the visibility of compelling approaches to common issues through strategic communications. I am a proud member of the LGBTQ plus community in my adopted city of Washington, D.C. I came here in 2007 to attend the George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs, and I've never left. I'm joined today by two esteemed experts in this space, Rebecca York of SMYAL, which is a DC-based organization, but Rebecca brings a wealth of expertise nationally and with corporations that you'll hear about in a moment, and Kevin Kim Wright from the Point Foundation, which you'll hear about in the national organization. So I just wanted to start off today's discussion. So welcome to you both. Thank you very much for agreeing to support this event. As we look out today, we have to take stock of the fact that for many members of our community, there is broader acceptance than ever before, and we should not lose sight of the progress that's been made. Today, as we'll learn as we move through discussion, there are alarming trends that are targeting specific members of our community. And from where I sit, these motivations are rooted in the same desire for power that has cleaved division in our society for years. But the nature of these attacks has been such that they've had impact on youth and highly vulnerable individuals in our society, which is very alarming. Today's conversation takes place with the backdrop of a polarizing presidential election, but in many ways, it feels like our visibility is a product of the success of the efforts that we have made over generations. And this is potentially what we are seeing today is a part of a cycle of pushback that hopefully will lead to a watershed moment down the road. But that being said, the Southern Poverty Law Center listed 86 hate groups, LGBTQ hate groups in 2023. That was a third more than there were the year before. And we've seen bills banning gender affirming care in 22 states, 19 enacted in 2023. So we are in a very challenging time in terms of the landscape to support LGBTQ plus youth and individuals in the workforce. And so that's what we're going to hopefully examine today. We are going to help understand the issue for our audience, help the audience understand the issue. We're going to help understand what folks can do, both to support individuals and also to support and advocate at a national level. So I am going to first introduce our two panelists, and then we'll have a couple of them sort of talk a little bit about their work. But Kevin Kim Wright is Chief of Staff at the Point Foundation, where he plays a pivotal role in shaping the organization's development and helping to lead diverse teams. Before assuming this position, he was Chief Growth Officer and Program Officer at Urban Arts, where he spearheaded the implementation of comprehensive multi-year strategic plan, propelling the organization to national scale through groundbreaking partnerships with industry giants like Microsoft, AT&T, Unity, and NBC Universal. Prior to Urban Arts, Kevin worked in leadership roles at the historic Riverside Church in New York City and Georgetown University, and he holds degrees from Indiana Wesleyan University and Duke University, and he lives in Los Angeles. Rebecca York, pronouns they, them, is a diversity, equity, and inclusion belonging leader and speaker with over 10 years experience in the field. They specialize in developing programs and learning experiences focused on LGBTQ plus community and its allies. Currently the Director of Youth and Development and Community Engagement at SMYAL, Rebecca is proud to lead a dedicated team of youth-serving professionals in creating safe, affirming, and educational spaces for LGBTQ plus youth and their adult supporters. Prior to this, Rebecca designed and delivered LGBTQ plus focused DEIB programs, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, learning programs for Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. And through this work, they supported the build and out and launch of LGBTQ plus self-ID programs, inclusive bathroom designs and language, transition guidelines, countless pronoun and ally campaign rollouts, and more. Rebecca has a BA in the study of women and gender from Smith College, Northampton. So welcome, Kevin and Rebecca. I am going to start off with a question for Rebecca. Can you give us a little bit of a background on your role at SMYAL? Give us a thumbnail of what SMYAL does and your journey into this role. It sounds like you've had a really interesting journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Ted, for bringing SMYAL into this conversation. So SMYAL supports LGBTQ plus youth ages 6 to 24 across DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And we've been doing this work for over 40 years at this point. We serve youth in three kind of primary buckets of programming. The first is housing. Right now, we are the largest LGBTQ plus youth housing provider in the district. That is not by choice. That is because of budget cuts and things like that that have deeply affected our community and the resources that we have available. So we are working very actively with other housing providers to do our very best to plug the gaps that we can and provide that equitable access to care as possible. We also have a clinical services arm where we provide free clinical services to youth ages 6 to 24. This includes play therapy for the littles. It includes in-school therapy from the elementary all the way up through high school age ranges. We're actually just expanding this team now to go into PG County. For any of you who may be local to this area, it's a county up in Maryland. And then we also have the programs that I oversee, which are all of our youth development and community engagement programs. This is everything from pride celebrations, youth pride, dances, holiday celebrations, to in-school programming that supports staff, teachers, students, and parents across, again, elementary, middle, and high school levels. We've got a summer camp for 6 to 12s. We have what I believe, at least to our knowledge, is one of the first, if not the first, programs dedicated to LGBTQ plus youth ages 6 to 12 that gives them access to safe community spaces in non-clinical environments and non-educational environments. So it's time to come meet new friends, hear a book author talk, do an art project, and be who they are and explore their identity in that full way. And then we've got leadership development programs. We have scholarship opportunities for young people at a much smaller scale than the Point Foundation. Ours are relatively supplemental by comparison. And then we also do conferences and workshops around arts and advocacy and all sorts of other kind of local engagement work. And in terms of my journey into the organization, I've been connected to SMYAL for many, many years. I grew up in this area and connected to SMYAL resources as I was coming out in high school, and have stayed connected ever since. It was my first job out of school, running a lot of the programs that I just mentioned on my vertical. And then, as Ted said, I went off, I worked with a wonderful organization called Out and Equal, managing their learning portfolio, working with companies, a lot of whom had either large science and STEM wings or were dedicated to that field, and supporting employee resource groups and D&I leaders and executives in creating that inclusive workplace environment. And then, of course, I came back here and it's been wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. That's great. I know SMYAL is an organization that I am personally involved with, supporting some of the fundraising initiatives and also just community engagement. So it's important to have these local organizations that can, have that infrastructure that's very important for being youth serving, and particularly with a mind on serving populations with specific needs. So Kevin, a little bit different. I know that Point does have some programming that is localized, but I think one of the things that you're trying to do at Point is be in places for students all over the country. So can you tell us a little bit about how the what work Point Foundation does, and also how you wound up into this space?
Absolutely. Rebecca, I loved hearing about SMYAL. That was inspired. I'm already inspired just from hearing all the fantastic and amazing work that you all are doing. So thank you for that. I'm proud to represent Point Foundation today. Point Foundation for over 20 years has been empowering promising LGBTQ individuals to pursue their full academic and leadership potential despite the obstacles set before them. And we do this because we want them to be able to make a positive and significant impact on society. That could be their individual neighborhood community where they live. It could be on a much more larger national or even international scale. We do this work by providing financial support to students to help them be able to complete their academic programs, their post-secondary programs. That could be anything from a certificate in cosmetology to a 2 years associate's degree, a 4 years bachelor's degree, a master's, a doctorate, any of those things. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to support LGBTQ individuals along any and all aspects of their post-secondary journey as they think about what does it mean for my life to have meaning and have an impact on the people around me for the issues that I most care about. We also, in addition to providing, of course, valuable financial resources and assets to young people, provide a number of leadership development opportunities that include mentorship with people who are in the same fields as those people who are studying. We provide a number of expert coaching panels where students can learn things regarding how to better manage their finances. When we all need help with that, right? Managing our money. In addition to, of course, learning about internships, how to interview well, how to create a resume, all those things that you need when you're getting ready to enter the workforce. I got here because for a very long time, I've worked on youth development and specifically in college access, career access. And so I have a deep and abiding love for STEM. In my last job, I was at an arts organization that decided to make the turn from being kind of a general arts, everything from painting to drawing, everything like that, switching hard into video game design and using that as a way to harness the power of creative technology to help young people get into college. I was so excited when I saw the position here at Point Foundation and now able to support students all across the spectrum of careers. But specifically this year alone, out of our 755 scholars, over 20% of them are engaging in programs specifically and directly related to STEM. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about Point.
Awesome. Yeah, I've gone to a couple Point events through the years, and it's been great. To meet. Had the meeting with your fellow Sammy in DC, who's working at OSTP. It was really awesome to hear his story of how Point has supported his journey. And college is so expensive now, and a lot of students. I know you all were talking about, or George, your CEO, when he was speaking, was saying that a lot of students that you work with, while they might be from wealthy families, they themselves are not being supported by them. So you have this vulnerability. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. This is actually something that comes up a lot when we talk to donors, because they'll say, well, this student's family looks like they have money, but the reality is that so many LGBTQ individuals find themselves cut off from their family. Their parents still might claim them on their taxes and at the same time say, I'm not going to fund a cent towards your education due to not being accepting of that child's sexual orientation or gender identity. It's way more common than we would like to see, and certainly harmful to that student's ability to be able to pursue their academic goals.
So let's kind of dig a little bit into how this recent pushback has been happening. How do you see, we've got these, states that have enacted legislation that's, making it, in different ways impacting members of the LGBTQ plus community, predominantly trans people and non-binary, genderqueer people. Can you talk a little bit about how that's playing out in the work that you are doing? Maybe Kevin, why don't you start, and then Rebecca, go national, and then more how it's happening at a local level.
It's affecting everything, and it's making us rethink a lot of our strategy around how do we get information into the hands of young people who are looking for ways to fund their post-secondary education. There are many places where we're not able to advertise in the ways that we would like to. And in some cases, we have people at colleges telling us, we'd love to be able to put this information about your organization into the hands of our students, but for different laws, regulations, we're not able to do so. And so that's allowed us to think of different ways. We've been working harder to get news of our information into scholars' hands so that they're able to know that there are resources out there. And it varies by state, of course, but that does create a bit more complexity when it comes to making sure that we don't have students who just exist in certain pockets of the country, but rather that we're pulling from all 50 states, US territories, to make sure that students who are studying here in the United States have the opportunity, regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation, to be able to find that support. I'll say as well, it makes us rethink all the time the types of additional leadership programming that we're offering. One of the big things that we try to instill within our students is that they are leaders, and that they are on the forefront of being able to advocate not just for their own rights, but for the rights of other individuals within the broader LGBTQ community. That, of course, is going to look different depending on in which jurisdiction they find themselves in. But it's something that we've been encouraged by, because we had students just this year, recent alumni of our scholarship program, launch their own voting and voter mobilization efforts to go out and make sure that people are aware of ways that they can support the LGBTQ community by showing up at the polls and voting.
Awesome. Yeah, not awesome. It sounds like it's a lot of challenges that you have, but that's a helpful explanation to sort of understand the context. Rebecca, okay, people don't think of, DC, Maryland, not Northern Virginia anyway, in the areas that SMYAL serves, but can you talk a little bit about how this is popping up, and y'all are directly serving youth in pretty intensive ways? I know with the housing and are you I have some questions, but I'll let you answer it first, just how this is showing up in SMYAL.
Yeah, well, I think similar to what Kevin said, it's showing up in every single thing that we do. Um, just for some context at a national level, and we do work really closely with national partners doing similar work in their own regions. There are about 105,200 trans youth as of 2023 who are living in states that banned gender affirming care. That's a massive number. And again, this is data from the Williams Institute, but chances are it's underreported, as with most data on trans and non-binary young people, even though across the board we do see rates of self-identification rising. So when we're thinking about the impact of this kind of anti-trans, anti-youth rhetoric and policy decisions that are being made across the country, we are absolutely seeing that play out locally. We have local groups that are being inspired by national movements. We have local youth who are being inspired by the TikTokers and the other social media influencers and the things that their parents feel emboldened to say. And as a result, we are seeing a very big need in this area for increased work in schools around anti-bullying, around what it means to create inclusive environments for every student, understanding that LGBTQ inclusion benefits every other student demographic out there because it brings more intentionality of language, of care, and of resources into those communities. So absolutely there. And I think it's compounding on top of what we saw coming out of the pandemic, where I believe it was Trevor reported that 60% of LGBTQ youth said that they wanted mental health services and couldn't access them. Right, that was the impetus for our starting our clinical services branch, and we've been booked up solid since it started. And again, we're scratching the surface of the need here, but we are, there are book bans being proposed in local school boards. We're having trouble getting into some schools who are worried about any formalized partnership with us in writing for fear that it will allow that small group of people who is really vocal to shut down this and any number of other programs that they have successfully been able to launch. Right. So again, teachers are reaching out for resources. Parents are saying we need new schools to send our kids to, because as they're coming out at younger and younger ages, our schools may have the infrastructure and support, but maybe the other students don't, or the students do, but maybe the admin don't, or everyone might be on board, but the policy and practice in the county and the district just isn't able to provide what we need.
That's interesting. Yeah. And there's just so many things. It's because I guess it's that, we're not a protected class. So it makes it sort of up to whereas there were some degree of protection that was broader. Can you talk a little bit about the data, the sexual orientation, gender identity data, SOGI it's called? And are either of y'all comfortable sort of discussing that? Because I know you brought it up, Rebecca, in terms of not being able to really track information, but and sort of because data is critical in order to influence decisions. Are we? Is that going to be something that moves, or is it going to be? Are we sort of? Well, I don't know. Just if you could comment on.
Yeah, I'm happy to just jump in quickly because I do want to clarify, we have a lot of data available to us right now that we didn't 5 years ago, and that really needs to be recognized. What I'm saying is not that we don't have the data. What I'm saying is that the data that we have may still not be fully representative of the community because we are still not getting, especially when it comes to youth, necessarily the resources into their hands for all of the reasons that Kevin mentioned earlier. Right, and then some. So again, we've got a lot of data. We know that Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ at a rate of 28%, which is higher than any other generation to date. And that's PRRI. And we know from Trevor that 1 in 4 of these LGBTQ youth identify as non-binary, right? So we have incredible data that shows the mental health impacts of bullying and of this anti-trans legislation. We have data at the local and oftentimes at the state level about the impacts in schools around some of these issues as well, including attrition rates, GPA drops, sort of these kind of more minute detailed things. But I think, you know, as with a lot of stuff that requires self-ID, you see this in the workplace as well. It is, you know, we still need more of it, I guess. It's great what we have, and there's so much more room to grow. We need more, especially in the workplace context. The more that data we can have from you all, the more data that gets funded for everyone else. It really is a trickle-down effect there.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's if you know, in order to direct resources from organizations in the STEM world, like the National Science Foundation or National Institutes of Health, we need you know, sort of data that's gathered in the same way that we gather data on other groups, and that seems to be something that is presenting a challenge. That uniformity, you do have data, but getting that demographic data is challenging. Kevin, did you want to jump in on this, or I can move on?
Sure, I'll just say that, you know, as I love what Rebecca said. I think that being able to disaggregate some of the data that we do have or would be helpful. We know from our work with the Williams Institute that LGBTQ individuals experience college debt that's about $14,000 higher than non-LGBTQ individuals. We know that they are twice as likely to experience discrimination from a school administrator, school official, school faculty member. These things make a difference, right? And whether a student is going to be able to complete the program that they're in, regardless of whether it's a STEM program. We know that in STEM fields, there, you know, in any company, I remember talking with the former CEO of Unity Technologies, John Riccatello, and he was saying, you know, yes, Unity wants to hire programmers. We want to hire data scientists. We also want to hire people to work in our HR departments and in our finance departments. We also need people to manage our buildings and our complexes and things like that. And so the STEM field, there's a lot of jobs there. There's a lot of good paying jobs there. And at the same time, if we have students experiencing the barriers to graduation, completing whatever degree they pursue, the likelihood of them being able to enter into those careers diminishes significantly. And so there are real dollars at stake, and those dollars translate into real livelihoods that are at stake. I'll say this as well. One of the most discouraging things I've seen lately is that support nationally, according to Gallup, is declining for marriage equality. Think about that. Support for marriage equality is declining within the United States. The reason I bring that up is not because everyone is going to get married. People have different goals in their life, and I'm not saying it's for everyone. But to me, that serves as a bit of a canary in the coal mine, that if we see that number starting to go down, there are probably things regarding support for a gender-affirming care, support for trans rights, that are probably going down even more significantly. And that, to me, is the real one real scary thing as we think about national attitudes, national perceptions.
You both touched on this a little bit. Thank you very much, Kevin. And we do have another question that an area of focus, but I just want to sort of, I think you're all touching on some things that might be of interest in terms of one of the sort of common threads around supporting LGBTQ plus populations is the notion of intersectionality, and that, you know, folks have different areas where they are also a member of a group that also potentially is marginalized or faces challenges. Can you talk about how that pops up in your work in terms of you know, sort of meeting the needs of the communities that you work with?
I'm happy to jump in. Intersectionality is baked into SMYAL's mission and vision. It has been really since day one, especially doing local work. It's sort of impossible to meet the needs of a local community without acknowledging that. But I think today we see that in so many different ways. We have a bilingual street outreach program dedicated to supporting Spanish language speakers across the DMV and getting connected to services and care. All of our programs are very intentional about staff training, about, you know, making sure that we are up on best practices and allowing for programming that acknowledges difference, that invites it. In fact, all of the leadership development programming that we do is done with the goal of keeping community history alive, both at the local level and at the national and frankly international level, as we're able to, which means highlighting leaders of color, Black and Brown trans leaders. Obviously, there are some certain names that we're all familiar with, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, but also looking beyond that, recognizing Miss Major Griffin Gracie, who was doing incredible work over in Arkansas, right? Doing that kind of history, both, again, using the Rainbow History Project locally to keep that alive. But I think also in terms of how we do our outreach, how we are bringing young people into the space and making sure that they're able to stay. For us, because we're a youth organization, a lot of that intersectionality revolves around bringing youth perspective into the decision-making process at all levels of programming. For example, our summer camp for 6 to 12s has a curriculum that's entirely choice-based this year, allowing the young people to navigate through programming and choose what activities they want to spend their time on. That is much more accessible for them, especially since young queer and trans folks tend to be more neurodivergent. And we also, it allows them to express themselves in the ways that they need, which develops leadership, communication, all of those other things.
Point Foundation has recognized the need to take account of the intersectionality that exists within our community. It's one of the reasons why we launched our BIPOC scholarship program that specifically supports Black, Indigenous people of color to be able to go out and succeed in whatever career that they have. One of the things we're additionally proud of is the ways that we've listened to what our scholars are telling us they need and adjusting, adapting, and innovating our programming as a result of that. And so students who come into our BIPOC scholarship program are given a different array of options to be able to participate in order to gain access to resources that can bolster their own personal and professional development. So for instance, we'll focus a lot of our BIPOC programming on mental health, recognizing that to be an LGBTQ person, we know from data with the Williams Institute that LGBTQ individuals in college are more likely to experience mental health challenges. We know that that is even higher if they are a BIPOC individual. So we'll provide coaching on that. We'll provide specific programming on what does it mean to be a person of color, a queer person of color, who's trying to make sense of how money works and managing finances, because there are different expenses that come up for people, and there are different expectations and perhaps cultural understandings of money and resources. We also had this year a really fun coaching panel led by one of the drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race, Lala Ree, who gave a great workshop on how to live your fiercest life as a BIPOC person who is an LGBTQ individual. We've gotten a lot of really great reception from our scholars as a result of these programs. And another way that we're being very intentional at Point about ensuring we're meeting the needs of our very diverse community is forging key partnerships with other scholarship organizations like APIA Scholars, Native Forward, the Thurgood Marshall Fund, the Hispanic Scholarship Foundation, all of these wonderful, wonderful institutions who are serving specific groups. We're working together with them to make sure that we are doing a great service, the best that we can, to BIPOC individuals within our community, and that they have resources that they can then take and put into their programming as well. Of course, we're always forming new partnerships. Some of our priorities this year are focusing on partnerships that allow us to explore disability within the LGBTQ community to make sure that we are taking account of all the range in which people are different, and that diversity can be celebrated and honored and, of course, supported.
Yeah, I actually had dinner with a researcher from UC Irvine last night who, during dinner, was explaining to me that autism and gender dysphoria have a high coincidence, which I did not know. So it's really impressive that it's good that y'all are doing this work. Do you feel like, I mean, is there, it seems to me that there's a significant amount of education, even among allies, around some of the nuances of the work that y'all are doing. Is that a fair statement?
I think so, and frankly, it's something that I'm learning. Right, I'm a person of color, but I have a lot to learn still, and so I think that the way that Point has entered into any of these conversations is from a posture of humility. When we go to an institutional partner who has expertise on a certain subject, we're free to admit that we know very little, and they have more information than we do, and we hope that it's a mutual exchange of learning.
Thank you. Yeah. One other question I think is that I wanted to touch on, one area that I think is an area that STEMconnector has always looked at, is how do we get industry to support STEM? And I can say in the world of STEM, there are folks that are like, oh, we're going to give to, you know, a science museum, not that there's anything wrong with that, or a robotics league or some low-hanging fruit. But then the challenge we have as we look at larger systems is that really supporting a model that is sustainable, that meets the needs of the community, that's aligned. And so I think that's kind of that collective impact model is really similar. You know, the lack of a collective impact framework in different communities is a challenge that we have, where, you know, not everything is going in the same direction. If things going like this, and we really want to try to get everybody moving along a continuum, or that way, but not both ways. And I'm wondering if you can talk about some ways that y'all are partnering with industry in your respective organizations, because I do like, you know, SMYAL is in the DMV area, has this ability to impact youth in ways that Point might not, and vice versa. You know, but I think you know, you both organizations are very well respected in their ability to partner with industry. So I was just wondering if you could talk about some of the work you're doing with industry partners to support LGBTQ plus populations. And Kevin, you can start.
Yeah, there's, you know, I'll say this is for individuals who want to see more LGBTQ people in STEM, thank you. I think that LGBTQ individuals bring a tremendous amount of diversity that have a direct impact on a company's bottom line, and be able to create greater opportunities for innovation, for diversity of thought, for dreaming up the next solutions and the newest solutions that will change and transform our society. I do want to put a plug in, though, for organizations I think that are really important, like SMYAL, because I'll say that as Point. There's, you know, we're a national organization, but when it comes to supporting students on the ground in an area like the DMV, we are limited in what we can do, and we really do depend on organizations like SMYAL who are being able to provide direct services. One of the number one things in terms of requests, we have an emergency fund that we offer our scholars. The number one thing that we receive requests for is always assistance with housing, because if that falls through, particularly for students who are in our community college and four-year degree programs, it has the potential to completely derail their academic journey. And many of them will never go back once they get off the track, because they have accumulated a lot of debt as a result of trying to stabilize their living situation. And then they feel, oh my gosh, I just have to get to work as soon as possible. So they're willing to take whatever job might come their way. And that's something that I think is a tragedy. So we're personally really grateful for the work of organizations like SMYAL that do provide that direct service. It does have a direct impact on a diverse array of people being able to enter into STEM fields, along with the types of scholarships, leadership programming, and scholar perseverance that Point Foundation offers.
Well, Kevin, you took the
Thank
words
you.
right. Oh, sorry, Ted. But you took the words right out of my mouth. I think similarly, or on the flip side, we're relying on you all as you provide that direct service that once youth are ready and able, that can get them into those schools and allow them to pay for tuition, housing, books, all of those costs that we know just rack up exponentially and very quickly. Obviously, the work that we're doing at the center of it is making sure that young people have the support that they need to continue, right? To keep going in whatever path that they're doing, so that they have the resources and supports they need if they want to pursue their education, if they want to just get a job, that they have the ability to do that, and some of the tools to start negotiating with their employers if they need better benefits, if they need some of these other additions. But I think the greatest impact that we can have in this area is the work that we do directly with industry. We do trainings for workplaces, and through that we're able to directly connect to employers and talk to them about how this conversation about LGBTQ youth is not that far removed from their conversation about workplace hiring and recruitment, right? That's not that far removed from talking about what it looks like to support their employees with regards to healthcare and benefits, who may have trans and non-binary kids at home that they haven't disclosed to their managers or leaders yet, right? All of that by necessity involves LGBTQ youth, regardless of whether companies are aware of it or not. And I think one of the biggest things that we encourage folks to lean into is engaging with the employees that they already have in the organization, whether that is out LGBTQ plus leaders or whether that's allies in the organization who are leading the ERGs and spearheading self-ID programs and things like that, because they are the ones with the answers about what your organization is going to need, not only in order to retain your employees, but also in terms of recruiting and attracting that top LGBTQ talent that got there because of Point, you know? And I think that is, we can talk about this as a remove, we can talk about this in other ways, but it really does just come down to what you're doing internally to your organization, and that will have an impact, right? Are you doing dedicated recruitment to LGBTQ student groups at organizations with strong STEM focuses, right? Are you allowing for those pathways? Are you doing that same recruitment to Black student alliances and AAPI student alliances, knowing that there are going to be LGBTQ students in those groups as well that you may not have otherwise targeted?
Thank you very much. I think that's very helpful information in terms of creating the climate you want. You know, the idea is we want to broaden the pool of students that are entering the STEM workforce and meeting those students where they are, and meeting people who are not in the majority where they are when they come into the workforce, and making sure that they are able to thrive. And that requires a lot of stakeholder engagement across the company. Those are the questions that I had. Are there any questions on from the audience? There is a report that I'd like to share. I can put it into the chat that came out that was just released by the Northwestern University earlier this month. And I think I should be able to do it with this link. I'll put that in the chat. It was the development of you know, some assembling some key leaders in this space, and developing sort of some key some recommendations and issues that require further investigation. So I encourage folks to take a look at that resource. Additionally, we'll send it out in the follow-up email. STEMconnector, we've done a brief the last couple of years for LGBTQ plus people in STEM that just provides some context on the issue, and we're happy to share that out in the follow-up email. I did have a lot of folks saying that this is a challenging time of year at the end of the quarter from industry, and saying that they really are interested. So we are sending out a reporting of this. So if you're interested in sharing this out with your networks, please do. I really appreciate Rebecca and Kevin in the busy month of June, which seems like it's just overdrive for folks working in the LGBTQ plus space. I appreciate y'all taking the time to prep for this and to join, and really great to have worked with y'all and to do this. And I'm hoping this will spark further collaborations between all of us. So thank you. All right. We can sign off. I don't see any questions. So I look forward to follow up on this, and have a great day and a great Pride.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.